We are heading, as you know, to Israel, and I'm going with a very simple and clear message on behalf of the President of the United States and on behalf of the American people. And that is that the United States has Israel's back. We have the back of the Israeli people. We have their back today. We'll have it tomorrow. We will have it every day. We stand resolutely against terrorism. We've seen the almost undescribable acts committed by Hamas against Israeli men, women, and children. Every day, we're learning more, and it is simply heartbreaking. Not since ISIS have we seen this kind of depravity, and we will continue to stand very resolutely against it. When I'm in Israel, I'll have the opportunity to meet with Prime Minister Netanyahu, President Herzog, other senior officials. I look forward to seeing our embassy team as well that's been doing terrific work during these difficult days. We're determined to make sure that Israel gets everything it needs to defend itself, to provide for the security of its people. Already, significant military assistance requested by Israel is on the way. That's on top of everything that we've been doing for years, including with the Memorandum of Understanding that was negotiated by President Obama to make sure that Israel has what it needs to defend itself. At the same time, we anticipate there'll be further needs, further requests. We've already been working closely with Congress on this, and we look forward to continuing to do that to make sure that Israel has what it needs. Second, we will be reaffirming the very strong message that President Biden has delivered to any country or any party that might try to take advantage of this situation. And that message is don't. The President has deployed, as you know, the world's largest aircraft carrier group to the region to make very clear our intent to deter anyone contemplating any further aggression against Israel. Finally, we're, of course, very focused on our own people, our own citizens. We lost 22 Americans. That number could still go up, and it probably will. At the same time, we have a number of Americans who remain unaccounted. We are working very closely with the government of Israel to determine their whereabouts, and if they have been taken hostage by Hamas, to work to secure their release. So all of these things are on the agenda over the next day or so with Israel, but the main point is this. We stand with Israel. We'll continue to do so. Thank you.
Mr. Secretary, yesterday Jake Sullivan said the U.S. officials were talking to the Israelis about getting civilian safe passage through Gaza into Egypt. Today, John Kirby said they're still talking to the officials about this. What is the holdup? What's the obstacle to getting civilian safe passage out of Gaza?
John, we are talking about that, and we're talking to Israel about that. We're talking to Egypt about that. It's an ongoing conversation. I can't get into the details. Some of this is, needless to say, and understandably complicated, but we want to make sure to the best of our ability, and I know Israel wants to make sure to the best of its ability that civilians are not harmed. But Israel has to take steps to defend itself. It has to make sure that any ongoing threat is dealt with, and I believe it has to make sure that going forward, what happened doesn't happen again.
Is the issue more on the Israeli side or the Egypt side?
I'm not going to get into the details, but it's an ongoing conversation.
And following up on that, in conversations between the U.S. and Israel, has the U.S. advocated any degree of restraint in terms of possible ground operations in Gaza, either for the sake of the civilians there or for the sake of hostages in there?
Well, again, I'm not getting into any of the operational details of what Israel may or may not do. I think you heard the President speak to this yesterday in his very, very strong and forceful comments. And of course, what separates Israel, the United States, and other democracies when it comes to incredibly difficult situations like this is our respect for international law and, as appropriate, the laws of war. We do everything we can to make sure that in these situations we avoid civilian casualties. That is in direct contrast with Hamas, which uses people as human shields. It actually seeks to put Palestinian civilians in situations where they could be harmed. This is very much part of their game plan. So we know that Israel will take all of the precautions that it can, just as we would. And again, that's what separates us from Hamas and terrorist groups that engage in the most heinous kind of activities. Thank you. We'll have a chance to talk later. Thank you.
All right, that was U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken speaking from the tarmac of the Joint Base Andrews just as he gets ready to take off. He's headed to Israel, and so he will be there tomorrow. Marwan Bishara, Al Jazeera senior political analyst, you're joining us from Paris. Marwan, I'm just going to, for people joining us now, I'm just going to recap real quick what Blinken said. He said, he himself said, look, the most important thing I'm saying here is that we fully have Israel's back. But number one, in a little bit more detailed, the U.S. is determined that Israel will get everything it needs to defend itself, and they anticipate that there will be further needs. I suppose he's talking about the military needs since they're already providing military aid. Number two, he reiterated President Biden's message to countries or organizations that would seek to take advantage of this to harm Israel. The message is don't. We heard that yesterday. You and I were talking about it. And number three, the U.S. is trying to determine the whereabouts of missing U.S. citizens and trying to figure out whether or not they were taken captive by Hamas. Short remarks before he heads over to Israel. Your thoughts on this trip? America sending its top diplomat to Israel.
Just also a quick note about what he said last, which you did not mention, about how the United States and Israel respect international law and the laws of war. And we just had, right before this news hour, we had two senior legal scholars on Inside Story. And for half an hour, they explained how Israel is already in breach of international law and breach of international humanitarian law in the way it is bombing Gaza and in the way it is blockading Gaza and in the way it is cutting food, fuel, and goods from Gaza. So we already have two scholars that have made the call that Israel is in breach of international law. So the Secretary of State probably should update his information. Second, if they are so much in respect of international law, why don't Israel and the United States join the International Criminal Court? Why are the United States and Israel still outside the International Criminal Court? Anyway, that's for the legal aspect of it. But in as far as what he said about the unconditional support, look, this is what's been really bothering me for the last few days, because my understanding as a student of U.S.-Israel relations for the past, 5 decades plus, when really they became strategic, is that America was always the grown-up in the room. America was always the grown-up in the room. When Israel acts like the rogue state it is, it was the United States that would come in and say, no, we should do it this way, we should the other way, there is respect for UN resolution, and so on and so forth. This very particular Biden administration that was really in a hostile relationship with Netanyahu for the past several months decided now to be more royal than the king, providing unconditional support, telling Israel, do whatever it takes as long as it takes, which really meant so far, just in the last 48 hours, war crimes against the Palestinians. So the American position is really becoming quite problematic because it is not only not neutral and not the grown-up in the room, it's actually helping escalate the war even further. It is not calling for a ceasefire. You would expect him to call for a ceasefire. And last but not least, his bit about the aircraft carrier. And once again, they're issuing ultimatums and threats to anyone who would dare take advantage of the situation. And I think, just judging for the past 24 hours, Hezbollah and Israel are already exchanging kind of very strange, chat through bombs, right, between them. And that could easily escalate out of control, which begs the question, is the United States going to use its Ford naval strike aircraft carrier to start bombing Lebanon or Syria? Are we going there already? And what happens when Israel starts its land invasion of Gaza that you and I just dropped before the secretary started talking? Because already American major, right, a military analyst, a former American major who's senior in those sorts of questions, is predicting, and I'm quoting, tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of deaths out of this war if the land invasion happens and Israel wants to secure the annihilation of Hamas with maximum security for its soldiers, because it's going to have to use tanks and artillery and so on and so forth. So already the military analysts are telling us that if the land invasion goes, as apparently it will, because Gallant has already announced it to Israel's soldiers in a video, already is online, that we are going, the next stage is land invasion, which means that is going to be, apparently, again, according to the military and American military analysts, that this is going to be the worst sort of urban warfare since Second World War.